This is Chesterton Radio, the true, good, and beautiful at chestertonradio.com.
65. The Jack Benny Program, presented by Lucky Strike.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky strike, be happy, go lucky strike today.
To pick the mildest cigarette, you don't need sleight of hand. Taste Lucky's magic mildness, then they'll be your favorite brand.
I wash and scrub and cook and sew, and still I sing a song. Because I never work alone, I've Lucky Strike along.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky strike, be happy, go lucky strike today.
Enjoy your cigarette. Enjoy truly fine tobacco that combines both perfect mildness and rich taste in one great cigarette, Lucky Strike. For only fine tobacco gives you both real mildness and rich taste. And LSMFT, Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. So, friends, be happy, go lucky. Try a carton of Lucky Strike.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky strike, be happy, go lucky strike today.
The Lucky Strike program starring Jack Benny with Mary Livingston, Phil Harris, Rochester, Dennis Day, and the Sportsman Quartet, and yours truly, Don Wilson.
Gee, Uncle Jim, it sure is nice of you to take me on your milk rock.
I thought you'd get a kick out of it, Elmer.
Yeah, wait till I get home and tell all the kids in Calabasas. Yippee!
Shh, not so loud, Elmer. People are asleep.
Asleep? At 11:30?
Oh, yeah, this is Beverly Hills. Sleeping till noon is a privilege reserved for the rich.
Gee, in Calabasas, if you ain't up by 7, you're a bum.
Yes, I know. Oh, well, there's Mr. Benny's house. Whoa, Deborah, whoa. All right. Come on now, up over the curb. Easy, Deborah, easy. Ah, there you are.
Uncle Jim, what did you drive your wagon up here for?
Mr. Benny's gone for the summer, and I pay him 50 cents a week to let my horse graze on his lawn. Oh, he must be back from Europe. There's a milk bottle on the porch with a note in it. I better see what it says. The note's from Mr. Benny. Dear milkman, please leave 2 quarts of milk. I have just returned from London, where I was acclaimed the greatest sensation ever to appear at the Palladium Theater and a pint of cream. Well, I better find out if they want me to resume regular service. Well, good morning, Rochester.
Good morning, Mr. Milkman.
Glad to see you back, Rochester. How was your trip to Europe?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I was in Rome, Venice, Monte Carlo, London, and Paris.
Well, where did you have the best time?
Last night on Central Avenue. What a party.
Well, tell me, Rochester, was this as big as the farewell party they gave you when you went away?
Same one is still going on.
No.
Yeah, they didn't even miss me.
I gotta run along now, Rochester. I'll continue your regular service.
Thank you. See you in a fortnight. Doggone, it's sure good to be home. And I hope it's the last time Mr. Benny drags me to Europe. What a trip. Everybody else takes the Queen Mary or the Queen Elizabeth, but not us. We smart choice of the Nina, the Pinta, or the Santa Maria. Uh-oh. Look what time it is. Mr. Benny starts his first program today. I better see if he's up. Mr. Benny! Mr. Benny!
Good morning, Rochester.
Well, you're dressed already.
Yes, sir. Up, dressed, and raring to go. Just think, Rochester, I've been off the air since May, and here it is September. That's a long layoff.
It sure is, boss.
But it has been a nice vacation. Now it'll be good to get back to my millions of listeners. I wonder what they've been doing all summer.
Most of them been swimming the English Channel.
Oh, yes, we almost hit a couple with the Santa Maria. Rochester, I better have something to eat before I go to the studio. What do we got in the icebox?
Well, there's still a little of that Thanksgiving turkey left.
There is? I thought we ate the last of that in Scotland. Didn't we?
No, but we had it down thin enough so we can make a wish.
Oh, yeah. Well, Rochester, I'll just have some orange juice and a cup of coffee. I'll get it. Oh, it's a long, long time from May to December, and the dough runs short when you reach September. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. Don!
Hello, Jack. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Don. Come on in.
Oh, just a minute, Jack. What happened to your lawn?
My lawn?
I don't know who's been taking care of it, but look at the way the grass is cut. It's so uneven.
I would get a horse with a tooth missing. Come on in.
Well, Jack, tell me all about your trip to Europe. Did you have a good time?
Oh, it was great, Don. Just wonderful.
That's swell. How was your engagement at the Palladium? Were you a big hit?
A big hit? Don, you've known me a long time, haven't you?
Yes, I have, Jack.
And you know that I'm not the kind of a fella who boasts or brags.
Well...
What? Well, what I'm trying to say is, Don, my engagement at the Palladium was absolutely sensational. In all modesty, I can say it was a personal triumph.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Jack. You know, a few weeks ago, I appeared at the Hollywood Bowl in The Vagabond King, and I was a big hit, too.
Well, good. What part did you play, Don?
I was all the king's men.
Don, melancholy baby. Don, I know what you're laughing at, but I still can't...
Here's your orange juice, boss.
Oh, thanks, Rochester.
And I brought what's left of that turkey.
Good. Would you like a piece, Don?
Oh, no, thanks. That turkey looks awful.
If you think it looks bad now, you ought to see his passport picture.
So what? Who takes a good passport picture? Anyway, Don, I'm glad that you... Don, I'm glad that you had some work during the summer. Excuse me. Come in. Well, Dennis.
Hello, Dennis.
Hi, Don. Hello, Mr. Benny.
Ah, Dennis, it's so good to see you. Gosh, it's been almost 4 months.
Oh, it's good to see you, too, Mr. Benny. Gee, I sure missed you.
Well, thanks, Dennis. I've missed you, too.
Gee whiz, I thought you'd never get back.
Well, gee, that's sweet, kid.
How was your engagement at the Palladium?
Oh, it was wonderful, Dennis. Just wonderful.
I heard you were a big flop.
You heard I was a flop? Who told you that?
My mother.
Now, you're just being ridiculous. How would your mother know?
Well, she was the second mate on the Santa Maria.
Oh, stop. For your information, kid, I was a very big hit at the Palladium. If you don't believe me, ask Don.
How would Don know?
I told him, that's how. Now, look, kid, today I'm starting my 19th year in radio. We'll soon be going to the studio. And for once, I'd like to start a program without aggravation. Is that asking too much?
Not in a democracy, no.
That's not asking too much anywhere. Now, let's hear the song you're going to do for the first show.
Yes, sir.
I live in the country. Sometimes I live in town. Sometimes I take a great notion to jump into the river and drown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dream. Stop rambling. Stop your gambling. Stop staying out late at night. Go home to your wife and family. Stay there by your fireside bright. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dream. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dream.
Dennis, that was swell. You certainly picked a good song for the first show.
Yes, Dennis, and your voice is better than ever.
It certainly is, kid, and it has a richer quality.
Oh, that's because of my tonsils.
Your tonsils? You had those taken out a year ago.
I put them back in again.
Now cut that out! Dennis, I told you that I don't want to start out a new season. Come in. Well, look who's here.
Hello, Mary.
Hello, fellas.
Mary, I thought you were going right to the studio.
I was, Jack, but I got to thinking that this is our 19th year on the radio, and, well, I thought it would be nice if you and I went down together.
Oh, that's sweet.
Say, Mary, you really look wonderful today, and that's cute dress you're wearing.
Well, thanks, Don. I bought it for our first program.
Oh, when'd you buy it?
19 years ago. It's back in style again.
See, Mary, I'm right. Never throw anything away.
Say, Mary, you were over in Europe this summer, too, weren't you?
Yes, Don, and we had a wonderful time.
Jack told us what a big hit he was at the London Palladium.
Yes, he was. He did very well.
That ain't the way I heard it.
I don't care what you heard. Dennis, you should have been there. You would have seen an audience stand up and cheer for 10 minutes.
When was that?
The night the king walked in.
Yeah, right in the middle of one of my best jokes.
Jack, did you tell the boys what a sensation Phil Harris was?
Well...
No, Mary, Jack didn't even mention Phil.
He didn't?
Look, Mary...
Then I'll tell you. Phil was absolutely a ride with his songs. He took a dozen encores, and they just wouldn't let him off the stage.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that about Phil. Jack, why didn't you say something about it?
Because he's jealous.
Now, don't be silly. I wasn't jealous of Phil Harris.
Then why'd you go around London telling everybody he was Jack the Ripper?
I just did that for a gag.
Some gag. They almost hanged him.
That was after he sang That's What I Like About the South. He did the last 3 choruses with his feet off the ground. Now, come on, kids. We better get down to the studio.
Where's Phil?
Well, he's down at CBS already rehearsing the band. Come on, let's go. You know, kids, it'll be nice getting back to the old... Get off the lawn. You've had enough. and have your tooth fixed. Come on, Mary. I'll drive down with you. See you at the studio, fellas. Well, Well, Mary, here we are, Studio B, same old place. Gee, it's good to be back.
Yeah, there's always something exciting about starting a new season.
Gosh, when I think of all the great programs we've done from this studio. Come on, let's go in. Gee, the old place sure...
Hey, you, Bud, watch where you're going.
Who, me?
Yeah, you're standing right in the range of the camera.
Camera?
Watch out, Clumsy. Don't knock over those lights.
Lights? What's going on here?
Well, can't you see? We're in the middle of a television program.
Television? But I'm supposed to do a radio show in this studio.
What kind of show?
Radio.
Radio?
You think back, Joe. You can remember.
Jack, maybe we made a mistake.
How can we make a mistake? This is Studio B.
Hey, for heaven's sakes, mister, get out of the way. We're televising a program.
But I can't understand how...
Don't you see the red light on the camera? What are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for it to turn green. Anyway, I won't leave. This is my studio. I'm Jack Benny.
Jack who?
Benny.
You think back, Joe. You can remember.
Joe, he looks like Deborah. Look, fellas, there must be some mistake. We always do our radio show from here.
Well, I don't know anything about that. This is a television studio now, and Hey, wait a minute. There was some guy named Harris here before. We sent him over to Studio F.
Well, why didn't you say so in the first place? Come on, Mary. Got a lot of nerve changing my studio. The least that CBS could have done was to discuss this change with me.
Jack, you were in Europe all summer.
Well, they could have talked to my writer.
They were in Honolulu.
Well, then they could have talked to my agent.
He was in Alcatraz.
Oh, yes, what a coincidence. We all took boat trips this summer. Well, here's Studio F. Let's go in.
All right, fellas, now let's try it once more. A 1, a 2, a...
Phil!
Oh, hiya, Jackson. Hello, Livy.
Hello, Phil. How are things going?
Oh, fine, Liv. We're still rehearsing the opening number. I'll be with you in just a minute. Take a seat, Clyde.
Okay, Phil. We'll wait.
All right, fellas, now let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. A root, toot, 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 toot. Hit it.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Phil. Hold it. Phil, hold it. Hold it. Phil.
What's wrong, Jackson?
You're playing Guy Lombardo's theme song. He was our summer replacement.
Well, why didn't he take his music off the stand?
I'm glad he didn't. He may be with us next week.
Say, Phil, have you got the same musicians this year?
Yeah, Bagby, Remley, Kimmick, Sammy, same old gang.
Where's Fletcher, the trombone player?
Oh, Fletcher, he'll be a little late. His wife's going to have her 10th baby, so they put her in the clink.
Put her in the clink?
Phil, why would they do that?
I don't know, but it said so right on the door. C-L-I-N-I-C.
That's clinic. Clink.
What's the difference? She can't get out.
All right. Now, look, Phil, instead of rehearsing Guy Lombardo's theme song, why don't you...
Hello, Phil.
Hiya, Phil.
Well, Don and Dennis, it's glad to see you. You guys are a sight for pink eyes.
He admits it yet.
Say, Phil, Mary was telling me what a big hit you were at the Palladium in London.
Oh, Mary, huh? Oh, bless your heart, Liv, you pretty thing. Hey, Donzie, you would have been so proud of me. To quote the words of one of England's foremost critics, he wrote, "When Phil Harris walked out to the center of the stage, the vociferous ovation was not only tumultuous, but it finally reached a crescendo bordering on pandemonium."
That he could read, but clinic is clink.
Now, wait a minute. you must admit that Phil was a big hit.
All right. So Phil was a hit. What about me?
I heard you were a big flop.
You know, for a kid
Okay,
who doesn't...
folks, clear the stage. We've got to set the cameras up. Hey, Mac, put the lights on both sides.
Now, wait a minute.
Don't argue, chum. We got to do a television show here in half an hour.
But I thought this was...
Come on, Jack. We'll find another studio.
Okay, let's go. See, Mary, I don't know I know that television is important, but if CBS think they can push me around, they've got another thing coming. I'm going to take this up with my agent next visiting day. This is awful.
Jack, look. That studio across the hall has a sign on the door that says Lucky Strike.
Oh, yeah, that must be ours. Let's go in. Hey, Mary, look at the way those...
Quiet, please. We're doing a Lucky Strike commercial for television.
A commercial?
Jack, look at those cigarettes marching.
Yeah.
Hut, 2, 3, 4. Hut, 2, 3, 4. To the left flank. Arch.
Satisfaction, Lucky's the one you like. We're round and firm and fully packed, and just as mild as we can be. Be happy and go Lucky Strike, and smoke an Alice and a tea. And when you hear that soul American, every Tom and Dick and Harry can ride along and start popping it. Nothing beats a Lucky Strike. There's no rough puff, no puff that's rough. So clear the way. It's Lucky's day. L-S-M-F-T. 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 For the full, rich taste of fine tobacco you are sure to like. There is nothing half as good as puffin' on a Lucky Strike. L-S-M-F-T. L-S-M-F-T.
Jack, wasn't that wonderful?
Certainly was, Mary. It's amazing the strides that television's been making these past...
Jack, what's that on your hands?
Huh? Oh, darn it, it's paint. I must have touched a piece of scenery. Excuse me a minute, I'll go wash it off. Oh, no. A camera in here. I guess they're just storing it in here temporarily. Where's some soap? There, that's better. Mary?
I'm over here at Studio G. It's the only one we haven't gone in yet.
Okay, let's try it. Try anything.
All right, if that camera and lights are set, let's rehearse that scene again, huh?
Look, Jack, it's Alan Young.
Oh, yeah. Alan Young, what are you doing here?
I'm rehearsing my television show.
Oh.
Say, Alan, how do you like being in television?
Oh, it's wonderful, Mary. It's so exciting. And, Jack, I think you ought to get into it, too.
Well, I am scheduled to do a few shows this year, but, Alan, don't you think that television is pretty tough on radio actors?
Well, television is hard work, Jack, and there's no question it isn't going to be easy on the older radio stars.
Uh-huh.
Oh, but that shouldn't worry a man like you. You're in your late 30s, aren't you?
It's later than you think.
Yes, next year, you see, I'll be 40 again. I mean, 40. But, Alan, how do you think I'll photograph on television?
Oh, Jack, you don't need to worry about that at all. They got wonderful makeup men, see? They can remove wrinkles from your face. They can broaden your eyebrows. They can take away your double chin. Well, Gosh, they can do anything.
Well, how do you think my hair will photograph?
I don't know. Let's throw it in front of the camera and see.
Oh, no, you're not going to throw this one.
Don't worry, it always lands on its feet.
Mary, please.
All right, Mr. Young, we're ready to start the rehearsal.
Will you excuse me now? I have to go.
Well, certainly. Goodbye, Alan.
So long, Alan. Oh, by the way, Alan, one more thing I'd like to ask you. I don't want to get personal, but how did you get into television?
Well, I went in to wash my hands, and there I was.
Oh, well, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Jack, it's almost time for our broadcast.
Oh, Jack!
Well, here comes Don. Maybe he
Jack,
knows.
where are we going to go? Every studio I've looked into has been converted to television. Where are we going to do our broadcast of our show?
Well, I'll find out right now. I'm going upstairs and see Mr. Megan. He's the head man at CBS on the West Coast. Come on, Mary, I'm tired of being pushed around. Trouble every year. If it isn't my cast, it's my writers. If it isn't my writers, it's my agent. If it isn't my agent, it's his parole board. But I'm gonna get a studio to broadcast from if I have to. Oh, here's Mr. Megan's office. Pardon me, I'm looking for Mr. Megan.
I'm Mr. Megan.
Well, I'm Jack Benny.
Oh, yes, on the radio.
Mary, he remembered. He remembered.
Oh, of course I do. Now, what can I do for you, Jack?
Plenty. I came down here this afternoon with my entire cast to do my first show of the season, and what do I find? Every single studio in the building is occupied. Now tell me, where am I going to do my radio program?
Oh, yes, your radio program.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to find you a studio. I think I know where I can get you one. Excuse me. Hello, NBC?
What? What's going on here? Now look, Mr. Megan, why is it every year when I start a new season I run into trouble? For 19 years I've been on radio. 19 years. And a little thing like television comes in and disrupts everything. Why just once in 19 years can't I open a...
Jack, we'll be back in just a moment. But first...
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky strike, be happy, go lucky strike today.
I'm the policeman in our town. I walk through every street, and Lucky Strike rates right on top with people on my feet.
Some claim this and some claim that, but when all's said and done, for full, rich taste and mildness, too, Lucky Strike's the one.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky strike, be happy, go lucky strike today.
That's right, friends. Be happy, go lucky. Just taste the mildness, the richness of a Lucky Strike. Here's a great cigarette. You bet Lucky's always give you perfect mildness. Scientific tests prove it. Prove Lucky Strike is milder than any other principal brand. And you always get the full, rich taste of fine tobacco because LSMFT, Lucky Strike, means fine tobacco. Remember, only fine tobacco gives you both real mildness and rich taste. So, friends, be happy, go lucky. Try a carton of Lucky Strike.
Be happy, go lucky, be happy, go lucky strike, be happy, go lucky strike today.
Good night, everybody.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
This is Chesterton Radio, your home for podcasts of works by G.K. Chesterton, plus drama, comedy, mystery, science fiction, big bands, and much more. The soundtrack to your Chesterton day at chestertonradio.com.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. What I Saw in America by G.K. Chesterton. Section 1, Chapter 1, Part 1. What is America? I have never managed to lose my old conviction that travel narrows the mind. At least a man must make a double effort of moral humility and imaginative energy to prevent it from narrowing his mind. Indeed, there is something touching and even tragic about the thought of the thoughtless tourist who might have stayed at home, loving Laplanders, embracing Chinamen, and clasping Patagonians to his heart in Hampstead or Surbiton, but for his blind and suicidal impulse to go and see what they looked like. This is not meant for nonsense. Still less is it meant for the silliest sort of nonsense, which is cynicism. The human bond that he feels at home is not an illusion. On the contrary, it is rather an inner reality. Man is inside all men. In a real sense, any man may be inside any men. But to travel is to leave the inside and draw dangerously near the outside. So long as he thought of men in the abstract, like naked toiling figures in some classic frieze, merely as those who labour and love their children and die, he was thinking the fundamental truth about them. But going to look at their unfamiliar manners and customs, he is inviting them to disguise themselves in fantastic masks and costumes. Many modern internationalists talk as if men of different nationalities had only to meet and mix and understand each other. In reality, this is the moment of supreme danger, the moment when they meet. We might shiver as at the old euphemism by which a meeting meant a duel. Travel ought to combine amusement with instruction, but most travellers are so much amused that they refuse to be instructed. I do not blame them for being amused. It is perfectly natural to be amused at a Dutchman for being Dutch, or a Chinaman for being Chinese. Where they are wrong is that they take their own amusement seriously. They base on it their serious ideas of international instruction. It was said that the Englishman takes his pleasures sadly, and the pleasure of despising foreigners is one which he takes most sadly of all. He comes to scoff, and does not remain to pray, but rather to excommunicate. Hence, in international relations there is far too little laughing and far too much sneering. But I believe there is a better way, which largely consists of laughter, a form of friendship between nations which is actually founded on differences. To hint at some such better way is the only excuse of this book. Let me begin my American impressions with two impressions I had before I went to America. One was an incident and the other an idea, and when taken together they illustrate the attitude I mean. The first principle is that nobody should be ashamed of thinking a thing funny because it is foreign. The second is that he should be ashamed of thinking it wrong because it is funny. The reaction of his senses and superficial habits of mind against something new and to him abnormal is a perfectly healthy reaction, but the mind which imagines that mere unfamiliarity can possibly prove anything about inferiority is a very inadequate mind. It is inadequate even in criticizing things that may really be inferior to the things involved here. It is far better to laugh at a Negro for having a black face than to sneer at him for having a sloping skull. It is proportionally even more preferable to laugh rather than judge in dealing with highly civilized peoples. Therefore, I put at the beginning two working examples of what I felt about America before I saw it, the sort of thing that a man has a right to enjoy as a joke, and the sort of thing he has a duty to understand and respect, because it is the explanation of the joke. When I went to the American consulate to regularize my passports, I was capable of expecting the American consulate to be American. Embassies and consulates are by tradition like islands of the soil for which they stand, and I have often found the tradition corresponding to a truth. I have seen the unmistakable French official living on omelettes and a little wine, and serving his sacred abstractions under the last palm trees fringing a desert. In the heat and noise of quarrelling Turks and Egyptians, I have come suddenly, as with the cool shock of his own shower bath, on the listless amiability of the English gentleman. The officials I interviewed were very American, especially in being very polite. For whatever may have been the mood or meaning of Martin Chuzzlewit, I have always found Americans by far the politest people in the world. They put in my hands a form to be filled up, to all appearance like other forms I had filled up in other passport offices. But in reality it was very different from any form I had ever filled up in my life. At least it was a little like a freer form of the game called Confessions, which my friends and I invented in our youth. An examination paper containing questions like, if you saw a rhinoceros in the front garden, what would you do? One of my friends, I remember, wrote, take the pledge. But that is another story, and might bring Mr. Pussyfoot Johnson on the scene before his time. One of the questions of the paper was, are you an anarchist? To which a detached philosopher would naturally feel inclined to answer, what the devil has that to do with you? Are you an atheist? Along with some playful efforts to cross-examine the official about what constitutes a Greek arch. Then there was the question, are you in favor of subverting the government of the United States by force? Against this I should write, I prefer to answer that question at the end of my tour and not the beginning. The Inquisitor, in his more than morbid curiosity, had then written down, are you a polygamist? The answer to this is, no such luck, or not such a fool, according to our experience of the other sex. But perhaps a better answer would be that given by W.T. Stead when he circulated the rhetorical question, shall I slay my brother Boer? The answer that ran, never interfere in family matters. But among many things that amused me most to the point of treating the form thus disrespectfully, the most amusing was the thought of the ruthless outlaw who should feel compelled to treat it respectfully. I like to think of the foreign desperado seeking to slip into America with official papers under official protection, and sitting down to write with a beautiful gravity, I am an anarchist, I hate you all and wish to destroy you. Or I intend to subvert by force the government of the United States as soon as possible, sticking the long sheath knife in my left trouser pocket into Mr. Harding at the earliest opportunity. Or again, yes, I am a polygamist all right, and my 47 wives are accompanying me on the voyage, disguised as secretaries. There seems to be a certain simplicity of mind about these answers, and it is reassuring to know that anarchists and polygamists are so pure and good that the police have only to ask them questions and they're certain to tell no lies. Now that is a model of the sort of foreign practice, founded on foreign problems, at which a man's first impulse is naturally to laugh. Nor have I any intention of apologizing for my laughter. A man is perfectly entitled to laugh at a thing because he happens to find it incomprehensible. What he has no right to do is laugh at it as incomprehensible, and then criticize it as if he comprehended it. The very fact of its unfamiliarity and mystery ought to set him thinking about the deeper causes that make people so different from himself, and that without merely assuming that they must be inferior to himself. Superficially, this is rather a queer business. It would be easy enough to suggest that in this America has introduced a quite abnormal spirit of inquisition, an interference with liberty unknown among all the ancient despotisms and aristocracies. About that there will be something to be said later, but superficially it is true that this degree of officialism is comparatively unique. In a journey which I took only the year before, I had occasion to have my papers passed by governments which many worthy people in the West would vaguely identify with corsairs and assassins. I have stood on the other side of Jordan, and in the land ruled by the rude Arab chief, where the police looked so like brigands that one wondered what the brigands looked like. But they did not ask me whether I had come to subvert the powers of Sharif. They did not exhibit the faintest curiosity about my personal views on the ethical basis of civil authority. These ministers of ancient Moslem despotism did not care about whether I was an anarchist, and naturally would not have minded if I had been a polygamist. The Arab chief was probably a polygamist himself. These slaves of Asiatic autocracy were content, in the old liberal fashion, to judge me by my actions. They did not inquire into my thoughts. They held their power as limited to the limitation of practice. They did not forbid me to hold a theory. It would be easy to argue here that Western democracy persecutes where even Eastern despotism tolerates or emancipates. It would be easy to develop the fancy that, as compared with the sultans of Turkey or Egypt, the American Constitution is a thing like the Spanish Inquisition. Only the traveller who stops at that point is totally wrong, and the traveller only too often does stop at that point. He has found something to make him laugh, and he will not suffer it to make him think. And the remedy is not to unsay what he has said, not even, so to speak, to unlaugh what he has laughed, not to deny that there is something unique and curious about this American Inquisition into our abstract opinions, but rather to continue the train of thought and follow the admirable advice of Mr. H.G. Wells, who said, "It is not much good thinking of a thing unless you think it out." It is not to deny that American officialism is rather peculiar in this point, but to inquire what it really is which makes America peculiar, or which is peculiar to America. In short, it is to get some ultimate idea of what America is, and the answer to that question will reveal something much deeper and grander and more worthy of our intelligent interest. It may have seemed something less than a compliment to compare the American Constitution to the Spanish Inquisition, but oddly enough it does involve a truth, and still more oddly perhaps it does involve a compliment. The American Constitution does resemble the Spanish Inquisition in this, that it is founded on a creed. America is the only nation in the world that is founded on a creed. That creed is set forth with dogmatic and even theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence, perhaps the only piece of practical politics that is also theoretical politics and also great literature. It enunciates that all men are equal in their claim to justice, that governments exist to give them that justice, and that their authority is for that reason just. It certainly does condemn anarchism, and it does also, by inference, condemn atheism, since it clearly names the Creator as the ultimate authority from whom these equal rights are derived. Nobody expects a modern political system to proceed logically in the application of such dogmas, and in the matter of God and government, it is naturally God whose claim is taken more lightly. The point is that there is a creed, if not about the divine, at least about human things. Now a creed is at once the broadest and the narrowest thing in the world. In its nature it is as broad as its scheme for brotherhood of all men. In its nature it is limited by its definition of the nature of all men. This was true of the Christian Church, which was truly said to exclude neither Jew nor Greek, but which did definitely substitute something else for Jewish religion or Greek philosophy. It was truly said to be a net drawing in all of kinds, but a net of a certain pattern, the pattern of Peter the fisherman. And this is true even of the most disastrous distortions or degradations of that creed, and true among others of the Spanish Inquisition. It may have been narrow touching theology, it could not confess to being narrow about nationality or ethnology. The Spanish Inquisition might be admittedly inquisitorial, but the Spanish Inquisition could not be merely Spanish. Such a Spaniard, even when he was narrower than his own creed, had to be broader than his own empire. He might burn a philosopher because he was a heterodox, but he must accept a barbarian because he was orthodox. And we see even in modern times that the same church which is blamed for making sages heretics is also blamed for making savages priests. Now, in a much vaguer and more evolutionary fashion, there is something of the same idea at the back of the great American experiment, the experiment of a democracy of diverse races which has been compared to a melting pot. But even that metaphor implies that the pot itself is of a certain shape and a certain substance, a pretty solid substance. The melting pot must not melt. The original shape was traced on the lines of Jeffersonian democracy, and it will remain in that shape until it becomes shapeless. America invites all men to become citizens, but it implies the dogma that there is such a thing as citizenship. Only so far as its primary ideal is concerned, its exclusiveness is religious, because it is not racial. The missionary can condemn a cannibal precisely because he cannot condemn a Sandwich Islander. And in something of the same spirit, the American may exclude a polygamist precisely because he cannot exclude a Turk. Now for America, this is no idle theory. It may have been theoretical, though it was thoroughly sincere when that great Virginian gentleman declared in surroundings that had still something of the character of an English countryside. It is not merely theoretical now. There is nothing to prevent America being literally invaded by Turks, as she is invaded by Jews or Bulgars. In the most exquisitely inconsequent of the Bab ballads, we are told concerning Pasha Bailey Ben. One morning knocked at 8:30, a tall red Indian at his gate. In Turkey, as perhaps aware, red Indians are extremely rare. But the converse need by no means be true. There is nothing in the nature of things to prevent an immigration of Turks increasing and multiplying on the plains where the red Indians wandered. There is nothing to necessitate the Turks being extremely rare. The red Indians, alas, are likely to be rarer. And as I much prefer red Indians to Turks, not to mention Jews, I speak without prejudice. But the point here is that America, partly by original theory and partly by historical accident, does lie open to racial admixtures which most countries would think incongruous or comic. That is why it is only fair to read any American definitions or rules in a certain light, and relative to a rather unique position. It is not fair to compare the position of those who may meet Turks in the back street with that of those who have never met Turks except in the Bab ballads. It is not fair simply to compare America with England in its regulations about the Turk. In short, it is not fair to do what almost every Englishman probably does, to look at the American International Examination paper and laugh and be satisfied with saying, "We don't have any of that nonsense in England." We do not have any of that nonsense in England, because we have never attempted to have any of that philosophy in England, and above all because we have the enormous advantage of feeling it natural to be national, because there is nothing else to be. England in these days is not well governed. England is not well educated. England suffers from wealth and poverty that are not well distributed. But England is English. England is English as France is French, or Ireland Irish. The great mass of men taking certain national traditions for granted. Now this gives us a totally different and a very much easier task. We have not got an Inquisition because we have not got a creed. But it is arguable that we do not need a creed because we have got a character. In any of the old nations, the national unity is preserved by the national type. Because we have a type, we do not need to have a test. The end of Section 1, Chapter 1, Part 1.
You are listening to Chesterton Radio at chestertonradio.com.